Balochistan, will go to other provinces. And we have organized this special expert roundtable so that we can have ideas from the experts, sector expert. Some of them are from finance background, some are from early warning background, so that we can have your, wisdom as well while we draft this strategy, because this is a national strategy. And I have especially requested Jan Asghar Saab, because he has been, formal NDMA chairman. Currently, though, he is associated with the energy sector directly, but he has a massive background to tell us on anticipatory action and when they started in NDMA and now NDMA's current situation. So that's just because, we have a lot of experts here. So that's why I squeezing my time of all kind of discussion and background. The basic focus is that we will be discussing on forecasting and early warning, which is one of the pillars. Then we will discuss about pre-arranged financing, institutional cooperation, and community intervention. These are four basic areas where we would like to have your thoughts and your suggestions, inputs on that. To start with, I would request the first presentation. We only have one presentation, and then we have the discussion around that. So I would request Marcus Oxley for his presentation.
Yeah.
Online.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just. I've just pressed screen share there. Has that come up on the screen?
Yeah, audible.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, well, yeah, thank you for asking me to join you all. I'm sat here at a desk in London, so a little bit far away, but anyway, I hope the conference is going well. What I'm going to talk about, what I will present on, is about an emerging area of work which is called risk-informed development. So this is making sure that our development is more resilient, is more sustainable, which I think very much fits in with the overarching objectives of what this conference is going to do. So I've got a few slides that I'll go through, and maybe at the end we'll have a bit of time for Q&A. Depends on what your schedule is like. So let me talk through this. It's called Transforming Development to Minimize Risk Creation. So let me start by just framing this a little bit. So I'm sure some of you have heard of what's called these planetary boundaries. The last report that came out this year, what was called the Planetary Health Check, highlighted the fact that we have breached 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries. So why is that important? Well, it's these global processes, these regulating processes, which ultimately create the stability and resilience of our Earth's environmental systems. And it's that stability and resilience of those systems which provide the enabling environment for human development. So ultimately, our social economic development is very much conditioned by a conducive planetary environment for that development. And what we're seeing is that we're pushing through that, and that has a huge implication for risk generation. So particularly when we're looking at risk creation, the planetary boundary which I particularly am interested in are issues of climate change, ecosystems, so particularly our ecosystems decline, our land systems change, so our land use changes, and the other one is our water cycle, our fresh water cycle. So our energy systems, our agricultural systems are very much, as you're acutely aware in Pakistan, very much interrelated to that, to our water system. So there's a nexus between water, energy, and alarm bells ringing there, I'm afraid. And those alarm bells are actually also manifesting when we look at the increasing loss and damage due to disasters. They can be environmental disasters, they can be geophysical disasters, a whole range of different typologies of disasters. But the headline message, and these were figures that were produced by UNDRR in their latest flagship publication. And I don't even know what the word is for that figure. I think it's a trillion. So I think we're approaching 2.2 trillion there. But it's a staggeringly large number. You know, it represents 2% of the global economy being lost to disasters every year and rising. You know, that's a staggering figure. And the headline comment by UNDRR, by the head of UNDRR, is that despite the progress that we're making in what's called DRR, disaster risk reduction, we are creating the risk faster than we're able to manage that risk. So nobody's denying that we are making progress in disaster risk management. You know, clearly we're getting better prepared, better responsive, better recovery. But the fundamental challenge is we are still creating risk faster than we can manage that risk. And ultimately, disasters in this increasing loss and damage is essentially it's a signal that our development model is under stress. Our current way of development is creating risk in terms of hazards, vulnerabilities, exposures faster than we can manage that. So on all fronts, both on a social economic front, in terms of the loss and damage, but also on an environmental planetary boundary front, we've got some major challenges ahead. And so from a risk management perspective, I mean, the way that we talk about risk is this interrelationship between what we call the hazard, sometimes we call it threat, the degree of exposure, so what assets, people, resources are actually exposed to that threat, and the degree of vulnerability, that's so for an example of that. And of course we offset that through strengthening capacities, and by strengthening those capacities we can reduce the hazard, reduce the exposure, reduce the vulnerability. That's a pretty standard way of understanding risk, and it plays out quite well, whether that is an environmental threat, whether it's a biological risk like COVID-19 is the biological hazard. The exposure is the amount of people that are exposed to that. That can depend. If you live in a city, you're more exposed than if you live in a rural area. And of course, people are vulnerable to the virus. The way we can reduce that virus, we can vaccinate ourselves, and that reduces our vulnerability. The way we can reduce our exposure, of course, we can have lockdowns, or we can have PPE, wear a mask, reduces the amount of exposure to them. So it's a commonly used risk management term, and we can use that for all different types of risk. So let's just now put this a little bit more in terms of the development context of Pakistan, because I was looking at this economic growth strategy that you have. I think it's, around Pakistan. I understand that means strong Pakistan. It's no doubt it's ambitious. Those are ambitious social economic targets that growth plan is trying to achieve. I mean, 6% GDP growth by 2028 is high, and increasing that 9 to 10% thereafter. That is ambitious. I'm not nothing wrong with ambition, but those are quite challenging growth trajectories to achieve. I mean, I think in Europe at the moment we're kind of flatlining around 1% growth in GDP per annum. I think China's probably around about 6% GDP growth at the moment. So, and of course, that's the reason of that is, of course, it's to grow your economy. As the economy grows, it creates employment, creates jobs, and of course, it can lift people out of poverty. And of course, the raison d'etre of development, if you like, is how do we improve the prosperity, reduce the poverty of our people. And of course, that involves building infrastructure, new homes, creating jobs, and the priority sectors there. Perhaps no surprising for Pakistan within the Indus River Valley, agriculture, and then obviously mining, minerals, and of course urgent development in IT. So quite ambitious, but as I say, nothing wrong with a bit of ambitious. But here lies the challenge. I mean, this was the 2022 flood, which wasn't that long after the 2010 flood. I mean, I was around and about in that 2010 flood, and that again, at the time was unprecedented levels of impact. And this is just some of the headline impacts from 2022 that I pulled out from the World Bank data. 33 million people affected, 1,700 killed, 30 billion US dollars in economic losses. That's 4.8% of GDP. When your growth target is 6.8% and one single mega disaster knocks 4.8 GDP, that's going to undermine your social economic development trajectory there. We also need to bear in mind is that there's a lot of evidence to say the cumulative losses from small scale but recurrent disasters, which are under the radar of national level statistics, cumulative losses of those small but recurrent crises actually is greater than the larger scale but less frequent disasters. So these figures actually are underrepresented in many ways, particularly because a lot of these figures are related to the informal economy, informal settlements, and so particularly hazardous to high risk groups. And of course, the impact of that is it increases your levels of poverty. I think the World Bank estimated that 9 million people more were below the poverty line as a result of that in 2022. So the comment there obviously is, resilient development is essential to break the cycle of development and poverty. And I would say it's absolutely essential to ensure that we don't undermine those hard-earned social economic development gains. So that's the part of the context. And of course, this risk it's a multi-dimensional risk. We've seen this all over the world now. It's not just one single typology of risk. It's a systemic, multi-dimensional risk, and it's often a combination of particularly climate change, which is resulting in increasing extreme weather events and increasing variability.
Your audio is lost. Can you check it?
Yeah.
From your end?
Yeah.
Marcus?
Is that coming? Yes, I'm yeah. Is that there? I'm speaking. Oh. So can you hear me? Oh dear. I can hear you. I can hear you. Arup, can you hear me? Is it localized or you can hear me? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Arup can hear me. Is that a localized problem where you are? Hello? I can definitely hear you in this.
Slides.
Hello? Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you
we can
now.
hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
I think, can you go to the slide towards the winding up if you have some more? Yeah, please.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next one. Okay.
Okay. So I was just explaining about the relationship between risk and development. In terms of development trajectories, the headline story, I think, in Pakistan is these very ambitious economic growth trajectories. The recognition that if we want to lift people out of poverty, increase the prosperity of the nation, then we have to have a very ambitious economic growth strategy. And that is an ambitious growth strategy. As I said when I was speaking, I think China is achieving about 6% GDP growth per annum. In Europe, we're achieving about 1% growth per annum. So that is a very ambitious title, 5 million homes, 10 million jobs, and the priority sectors, not surprisingly, agriculture, particularly in the Indus River Valley. So that's the development ambition, but the challenge is how risk can undermine those social economic development trajectories. And I'm just quoting headlines here from the 2022 Pakistan flood, which wasn't so long after the 2010 flood, which I was involved in that, which at the time people were saying that was an unprecedented scale of flooding for the country. So that's one of the things that the climate people are saying to us, is that these extreme events are going to happen with increasing intensity and frequency. So these are some of the World Bank figures. 33 million people affected, 1,700 killed, 30 billion US off your GDP. That's 4.8% of GDP. Now, if your growth trajectory is 6.8% GDP, and one single crisis is knocking out 4.8% of that GDP, then we need to think how we can, disaster-proof our development trajectory. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, it's okay. Michael, Marcus, my request is that can you please wind up in next 2-3 minutes?
Yes,
because then we have list of speaker who will talk about after this one. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, so the risk is multidimensional. It's created within our development, and therefore we need to understand that risk within our development processes, which is exactly what risk-informed development is this emerging area of how do we ensure our development understands the risk created in development and manages that within our development. It tends to be our cities are at the front line of this. We're shifting towards an increasingly urbanized economy. Our disasters are increasingly urbanized. The challenges is our systems are fragmented. It's our understanding of
again your voice is lost. Cannot hear.
Okay. I'll draw it to a close then if you can't hear me there. Yeah. I'll finish on that slide.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll close on that. I'll stop there. It looks like the connectivity is not so good. Okay, have you lost me again?
No, you are there. You are there. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll stop there. It sounds like we've struggled a bit with that link, but never mind. That's the headline messages. It's our development paradigm. It's signaling distress there. That's a lot to do with it's a social ecological system. We need to think of it in that context. We need to understand what those limits and boundaries are. We need to bring informality into the process. Otherwise, we'll just have empty policies that never get implemented. Think systems. Use your understanding of risk to help you understand how to work across policy silos and see risk as a strategic enabler to help drive competitiveness, economic prosperity and development. Let me stop there because
Okay. Thank you, Marcus. Really interesting, but my apologies because net was not supporting in between. You were, breaking. But thank you very much for bringing your ideas here, particularly on the social ecological systems, because the story you have narrated through the bills of disaster and what developments takes place and what is climate change is impacting things. And you have rightly connected it with the social ecological system. Thank you for that. We will move on now to the sector experts who will be speaking on various aspects they have in their mind, as I requested along the 4 areas. So may I request Mr. Naeem Gul from World Food Program, because we are working together on the national strategy. So you can also talk in that way also. You can touch upon that.
I don't know if it's working. Yeah, thank you very much, Shafqat Sab, for giving this background and very comprehensive presentation. And just to quickly highlight here, WFP, together with NDMA and with the support from STPI, we recently kick-started the process of this national implementation strategy for anticipatory action. The question may come that why and how we conceived this idea. So far, there is so much happening around this disaster preparedness, DRR, emergency preparedness, response planning. But this anticipatory action is relatively a kind of a new term in the context of Pakistan. Though in certain other regional countries, in Bangladesh and Nepal, they started this approach from way back in 2015, some in 2017. And these approaches and this system is matured enough there and has created some miracles. That's why globally there's a shift. And now if you see the global, this new DRR structure, so you will find a kind of a new edition, anticipatory action in between there. So, and also I picked one point from this presentation, there was that plan with an interlinked thresholds. So the idea behind this entire anticipatory action is that we do the preparedness actions, we do the response, but why we cannot set some thresholds and why we always wait for the impact and disaster to happen instead of agreeing on those thresholds that in case if the hazard reached to that level, so this is the point where we need to act. So I think these discussions would help us, and this strategy which we are jointly working on would help us to set some guidelines that how we can agree on those thresholds. And the entire effort is towards that. Our entire this disaster risk management system is either based on preparedness or is response focused. So there is no in between. So the plan is that we need to work on something which allows the institutions, for instance, at national level to NDMA, at provincial level to PDMAs, and then taking it down to the district to the DDMAs. So they are able to and they are enabled to act before the disaster and before the impact of the disaster. The current policies, the funding they have, the mechanisms which are in place are only either supporting the preparedness or the response. The NDMP and the NDMF, which the National Disaster Management Fund, which NDMA possess, and then at provincial level, there is a similar fund with the PDMAs, has some limitation, cannot be activated based on the anticipation. So there are multiple challenges which we are trying to somehow first take stock of, and then come up with some recommended solutions that how to move about it and how government can help somehow to bridge those gaps with technical supports from such think tanks. So this is something which kind of a very initial step while working with the institutions and enable them for the anticipatory actions. But this is not the end. Moving forward, there is a kind of a lot of scope actually, since this one hour anticipatory action even won't serve the purpose. This needs to be linked to the social protection system, the wider kind of a, the social safety net. So 1 hour anticipatory action cannot fulfill the requirements and cannot reduce the miseries of those vulnerable people who actually need the support. So the next step would be how these anticipatory actions can link to the social protection systems, how the risk assessment mechanisms, the methodologies can be strengthened so the triggers and thresholds which we come up with are context specific and risk informed. So these are some of the areas which we are jointly working on, and I think together we need, with your wisdom and with your thoughts, I think we will be moving on and we'll come up with something which can serve as a kind of a base and would be a live document to build on.
Thank you, Naeem, for elaborating about the plan, what we are doing, what we are thinking, and how we need the support from the sector expert. So Joanna is here, and then, of course, you have raised one question for her also. She may be responding on social adaptive protection kind of thing. Yeah, thank you very much. So, Bilal, may I request you? Bilal Khalid from the World Bank.
I don't know if this is audible.
Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, a big thanks to SDPI for organizing this very timely and important session. I think this challenge addresses one of the core development challenges for Pakistan right now, which is about managing risks before they become disasters. The 2025 monsoon season and several floods before that have clearly shown that for Pakistan, being reactive towards disaster is no longer a sustainable approach. The future for the country lies in proactive, system-oriented resilience, where credible forecast, financing mechanisms, and institutions come together to protect lives and livelihoods. At the World Bank, we also fully recognize this challenge. Our country partnership framework, which was approved earlier this year, has a core pillar focusing on climate and disaster resilience, and that approach is embedded in anticipatory and proactive action. We have a target of protecting 75 million people from climate and climate-related disasters over the next 10 years. But beyond numbers and plans, we are also operationalizing this vision through a portfolio, which is helping the country move from event-specific recovery to a more system-level approach to resilience building. And I'll quote a couple of examples in terms of the action on ground on how we are trying to experiment this at the provincial level in particular. So this started from Sindh. I'll start, I think, 2022 floods. It was also mentioned in the presentation earlier. That's when the World Bank went in with a very large reconstruction program in Sindh. But the realization there was that 2022 was a very unique flood historically for Pakistan and particularly for Sindh. So while, of course, we are doing reconstruction with a Build Back Better perspective, there was a realization that the next flood might be quite different from what we are targeting. So to create a bridge between post-disaster reconstruction and also forward-looking long-term risk reduction, we integrated elements of looking at risks beyond the event itself. And the core of this was a comprehensive flood risk assessment that we are doing for the right bank of Indus, which will help the province look at the flood risk at a system level, not just one specific event, both from historical floods and also the future climate scenarios. And the idea is to come up with a prioritized set of interventions or investments, both structural and non-structural, for the medium to long term. So essentially in giving the decision makers the information to make those decisions and choices. So that's something that we have already underway in Sindh as part of our flood reconstruction program. Learning from that experience, we are also now engaged with the government of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on a flood resilience operation. And the idea again was when the request came to how we move away from just more than infrastructure, because when we talk flood protection in Pakistan, typically it's about embankments and check dams and whatnot. But while that is an important part of the puzzle, it's also other elements that need to come together when we talk about system resilience. And here again, I think one element is that we are trying to strengthen and target in KP is the early warning systems and decision support tools, where we are able to give them an approach that is anchored in hydrological, hydraulic modeling frameworks, giving them quantified risks for future, and again, climate scenarios to come up with the investments that they want to take up. And similarly, looking at long to medium term flood risks beyond specific events. So those are two examples where we are trying to transform this vision into action. On the global level, I also want to highlight beyond the country aspect. So at the global level also, I think there's recognition now that we are living in a time of crisis and emergencies, whether they are man-made or natural. So with that in mind, the World Bank has also introduced what we're calling a crisis preparedness and response toolkit, which essentially offers the countries an integrated set of operational, analytical, and financial instruments to prepare for a disaster. Then essentially it's about ex-ante approach rather than being reactive one. And there are a few instruments that I would like to mention just briefly, which are particularly relevant for Pakistan. So one is the RRO, that's a recently introduced instrument, the Rapid Response Option, which allows the country in terms of its portfolio level to quickly reallocate financing towards emergencies in case of a disaster. And this is linked to another instrument that we already had in our system, which was called the Contingent Emergency Response Option, which was at the project level, providing critical liquidity to the government in case of a disaster, where our project funds could be repurposed for responding to emergencies. And that's something we've already done in the 2022 floods. But now the RRO allows that same approach to happen at the portfolio level rather than the project level. So it's more efficient. It gives a bigger access to larger liquidity pot. Another one very important, I think, with the context of Pakistan is the CAD-DDO, the Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown Option, which is essentially a pre-agreed contingent line of credit that is available to the government in case of the onset of an emergency or a disaster. So those are some of the instruments that are available to the countries. We are already in discussion with the EAD and different aspects of the government of Pakistan to see how we can best approach and integrate them. One important aspect on the analytical side linked to this crisis preparedness response toolkit is the crisis preparedness gap analysis, which is essentially a diagnostic tool which helps countries see how well they are prepared for disaster. And that's an exercise we did for Pakistan last year in collaboration with the NDMA and also the other stakeholders, PDMAs, provincial governments were also involved. The headline from that assessment, which I think many of us will agree in the room, was that while we have very solid national and subnational frameworks which have been developed over the past decade or so, there are critical gaps in credible forecasts, decentralization of the DRM institutional mechanisms, and data interoperability. So these are, core ingredients of anticipatory action. And I think that's something that we are trying to integrate in our portfolio moving forward, addressing these areas, and something, a country needs to focus on if they want to shift from a reactive towards a proactive approach. Last, I think, point, a closing note, when we talk about anticipatory action, it's about early actions, but then it's also about early thinking. And I think that's what we are trying to do in this room. But I would like to acknowledge the governments also, because in the aftermath of 2025 floods, we saw this time KP and Punjab were the worst affected provinces. And of course, as Bank, we have a portfolio and dialogue with these governments, and we engaged with both of the governments to offer what we could help. And the encouraging part, I think, which I would like to share, and I think it's something for positive for all of us working in this space for quite a while, is that both KP and Punjab government requested us that we're not interested in response and reconstruction for this specific event, but we want your help to look at the long-term resilience, because they're recognizing that floods are now a reality for them, and they will strike them from different aspects, from different dimensions again and again. So while they're taking the lead in managing this specific event, they're very keen to look at resilience building in the long term, from a more anticipatory approach. And I think that's something that's very encouraging for us. That's something that we are closely working with both provincial government and also the federal government to help, move the dialogue of discussion of floods from disaster response towards, more of an institutional resilience. So I think that's something, that's a step in the right direction. And these are the elements as Bank, we're already working at the provincial and federal level, and we look forward to continuing supporting the government in this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Bilal, for elaborating what World Bank is doing here and globally. I think government is also recognizing that your framework is very much aligned with their plans as well. Thank you very much. I think from World Bank to ADB, can I request Arnab Kumarji from ADB Manila?
Thank you very much. And my job has been made easier by my colleague from World Bank. ADB is more or less working in similar space, but let me highlight some of the things which I think in terms of solutions. We know the elephant is in the room, but how do we solve the problem? So in terms of recommendations, I would like to highlight a few. One is, which has already been mentioned, about making development risk informed. So we need to understand the risk. And only when you understand the risk, you can plan. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say. So if you have that risk information, the risk exposure data, the information of the hazard, then of course you can plan. And we are, like the World Bank, we are promoting what is known as a risk-layered disaster risk financing framework. Pakistan has the benefit of developing that is already in place. And we are encouraging that particular risk financing framework is risk informed, basically. So it has to be based on risk exposure analysis, and also the loss exceedance curve should be there to identify the frequency of the disaster, the severity of the disaster, and then identify the appropriate instruments. It is important for policymakers to ensure that their budget is optimally managed. And this is a very important piece of information for the Ministry of Finance that way. So on the top of the budget, we are also looking at supporting through contingent financing mechanisms, which includes something like the CAT-DDO in ADB's case, which is the contingent disaster financing arrangement, so that if a loss exceeds a certain threshold, there is a pre-arranged financing in place to meet the budgetary gaps. On the top of that, we are looking at an insurance-led layer. We are in discussion with the government as part of our CIDREP program, which is the Climate and Disaster Risk Resilience Enhancement Program, to establish a solidarity fund. We were able to work with the government to ensure that a separate contingent line for disaster risk financing is created in the budgetary line itself last year. So a portion of that will go into fund this solidarity fund, and the solidarity fund will essentially be used for uptake of disaster risk transfer instruments / insurance, basically. So we will use insurance and reinsurance mechanisms in 3 specific areas. One is shock responsive social protection, where we will work with agencies like the Benazir Income Support Program. We will look at providing insurance for critical public infrastructure. A mapping of the critical infrastructure is already in place. The energy infrastructure has already been done. And then we are also looking at supporting crop and agriculture insurance. That is also to help the farmers, not only in terms of providing compensation after a weather-related loss, but also encourage them to introduce modern crop husbandry and animal husbandry practices. If you want to modernize agriculture, it will lead to investment in new technology, and also technology will bring new risks. So this is where modern parametric insurance and other types of insurance products will help to not only increase productivity of the farmers due to modernization, but also raise incomes, reduce disparity in income levels, and improve welfare of the farmers. So that is one important aspect of the work. The other important aspect where we are looking at is in terms of institutional and governance reforms, where we want to strengthen the PDMA coordination and link with sector ministries, establish more risk-sensitive public investment frameworks with the CPMA and other frameworks in place. In terms of specifically on scaling up anticipatory action, we are also exploring forecast-based financing as part of the shock responsive social protection list. We are also looking at investing in AI-driven early warning systems for better community preparedness. And we will also be looking at establishing insurance pooling mechanisms also to address market failure issues. The government has its limitation in terms of what it can do in terms of funding. The problem is humongous, and we have to see how we can crowd in the private sector. So therefore, we are looking at risk transfer solutions in this space. And parametric insurance, microinsurance for farmers will be another area of importance for us. The insurance pools, we are still exploring. They can be through private investment and also through investment or through a PPP type of an arrangement. So what I have mentioned so far is only on the physical risk, on how it can be managed, which is essential, and I'm sure other panelists will also be addressing more of these issues in details more eloquently. But one risk which we also talk in terms of climate is the transition risk, you know. So the transition risk is in terms of phasing out technology which is carbon emitting that way. And if we do that, it also affects jobs, it affects employment, it affects so many other things. So to address the transition risk, we are also looking at developing products to see that some of the just transition related issue, the issues in terms of access to finance. Banks are very reluctant to provide loans for new climate technology, and they need risk-sharing instruments like guarantees, or they need some performance-linked instruments like energy efficiency or energy savings insurance. So these are some types of products which can be used and introduced, I would say, in the market to at least piloted, I would say, to begin with, so that we can incentivize the uptake of the new green technology, especially by the MSME and the SME sector. And so for doing so, we of course, this is not specific to Pakistan, but we have looked at two types of market. One is Philippines and other in India, where we have done an assessment study in terms of how these instruments can be introduced. The market can be prepared, by the products can be piloted through the banks and other financial institutions. So transition risk arrangement is also another important aspect which should not be forgotten. Whatever we are doing, we are also looking at how the entire value chain, whether it is agriculture supply chain or any other important value chain, especially the ones which contribute more revenue, like say the rice export or garment exports and all. We are looking at how we can insulate and make those supply chains also more resilient by putting in appropriate financing instruments in place. And here we need the support of the private sector also. So to conclude, I would say that we need to possibly have the resilience frameworks in place to ensure that the planning and decision making is risk informed. We need to have robust data frameworks in place, data analytics in place, so that we have very granular data of the risk, and we can design both public finance and also private finance products and instruments, basically, which can be leveraged. The third area is we need to pilot some innovative approaches to understand the risks, also in terms of introducing new instruments, how consumer protection is addressed. We need to look at some of these solutions to ensure that they are gender sensitive, they're able to provide employment and production opportunities to the youth, so that there are new avenues for production and income generation. And finally, we need to put in measures in place which can help in evacuation before a disaster can happen and save millions of lives and assets and livelihoods. So those are basically the focus areas we need to continue to work. We are sharing this information at regional fora like the CAREC, which is where Pakistan is a member, and also at other international fora. We are also working closely with the financial sector regulators so that the issues related to financial stability can also be addressed. So in a limited fiscal space in any country, and Pakistan is no exception, we need to look at a range of public sector and private sector solutions. And we are happy to work further and share our experiences as Pakistan develops its strategy on anticipatory action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Arnav Kumarji. Thank you for starting from the understanding of risk information, leading towards many of the anticipatory action. Particularly, you mentioned about the insurance particularly of crop insurance, because what happened in 2025 after 2022 flood, in the recent flood, we had the river which were not having water since 1955. This river got flooded, and all the crops on the way were destroyed. And now farmers are looking for the remedies, but there is no that such. So that's why your discussion is very much relevant to our discussion, and that would certainly be helping us to incorporate into our anticipatory action bit. Thank you so much. Now I would request Mr. Brar Saab from JICA. He's the disaster management officer there. Let's hear from the donor side also.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Shafqat sir, for inviting us on this event to share uh, the information and the knowledge sharing and also the experience toward the anticipatory actions, especially. So this is, I think, a wonderful platform for all the stakeholders that who are thinking or planning to do some activities toward this the disaster risk reduction. So as a generic that if I share that every year we have this flood issue in Pakistan, and if we look at 2010, then 2014, 16, 2022, and then we have the same issue in 2025 in shape of the heavy monsoon rains. So according to this alarming situation, I think that the government of Pakistan really need to do some concrete actions toward the pre-investment on the disaster risk reduction. And if we look at the if we do some investment to reduce the risk, so definitely we will save the post disaster recovery. And parallel to that, if we also make the resilient infrastructure, so that would also be, you can say that we can reduce the economic loss. So as per the JICA's cooperation toward this anticipatory action and this disaster management specifically, so we are trying to doing our activities, our actions, which are very, you can say that in line with the national strategy of the government of Pakistan, that we are supporting government of Pakistan different departments, especially the response departments. If we talk about the Pakistan Met Department, so we are providing the financial assistance through grant scheme for installation of automatic weather stations. So this is also one of the key, you can say that the aspect that toward the control of the flood, at the flood control, we are doing to improve the weather forecasting system. So how we can improve the weather forecasting system? So we are installing 4 weather radars with Pakistan Met Department. Previously, it was the C-band radars which were installed in 1990, but now after 25 years, we are upgrading these 5 radars into S-band radars. So after the completion of these 4 weather radar networks, so the accuracy of the weather information would be much more, and the PMD, Pakistan Met Department, will be able to issue the accurate weather alerts from short to long term. So parallel to that, we are also trying to install the flood telemetry stations. Actually, after the 2022 flood, JICA's main concentration is on the Indus River mainly. So if we look at the topography of the Indus River, so it has mean that we have divided into 3 main, the parts. The upper part has a different issue of the flash flooding. And if we talk about the mid part, which has the embankments, the dikes, so they have the destruction during these emergency, during this flooding condition, so the destruction on the dikes. So if we talk about the downstream, which is the Indus, the Sindh area or the Punjab low-lying area, so there is the inundation. So we have these 3 issues. So according to that issues, we are proposing under the government of Japan's support, JICA is implementing the automatic the weather stations and the telemetry stations in the upstream area on all 5 river, including the Indus. So to produce the real-time discharge flow of the data of the rivers, and that would be provided to the provincial departments for better planning and future projection. And then on the mid part or the mid stream area, we are proposing to improve the dike structure. We are trying to invest on the dikes, advanced modeling, and to mean that the reinforcement of the dikes to do some advanced method. So we have this project in KP, and on the downstream Indus, in the Sindh area, we have also did a study after the 2022 flood, where our advisor assessed more than 100 sites from downstream to Tarbela to the Indus River, and he proposed many, you can say that the vulnerable points. So according to it's around more than 100, you can say that the vulnerable points where we need to do some concrete, or you can say that the rehabilitation of the dikes. And according in the result of that study, so JICA is you can say that the piloting one of the project, which is the reinforcement of the dike on the upper Larkana city. So under the grant assistance scheme, so we have the plan to do this project in Sindh area. So as per the I mean that if you look at the improvement that how we can do the anticipatory actions toward the risk reduction. So I think that the early warning is very important, that we need to invest on the early warning. Either it's radars, either it's telemetry stations or automatic weather stations. And with parallel to that, we also need to do some investment on the resilient infrastructure. Either it's dams, either it's the buildings, other is the other infrastructure. So it's also very important that we need to focus on that area. And the third thing is, which is very important, the capacity building of the institutions. Either these are the federal, provincial, or the district level. So we also need to incorporate all these three tiers to do the appropriate capacity building opportunities to all these institutions, and to combine them and to think on a same page. So I think due to this approach, we can do some better planning for the future, and also we can try to reduce the risk of disaster. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Abrar Sahab. I think these 2 points are very important, that when we talk about anticipatory action and financing, the forecast-based thing. If our weather forecast would be accurate, then certainly we can assess things. And secondly, on telemetry system, that's an important, and particularly now we have seen, particularly in 2025, that we were thinking that these rivers are dead. We were not looking at them. But now we have seen that it's not Indus, we have to look at other rivers as well. So in that way, your interventions are very important. So look forward to have collaboration with you very soon. Thank you very much. So moving on to, we have one from Muslim Aid INGO sector, and then we have 2 private sector representatives, and then we will move on to the final stage. So I would request Saqib Basir Sahab for your intervention. Mike de denge Saqib Sahab.
Thank you, Dr.
Actually, I want to open the floor also. I think I would request that, synthesize your thoughts in lesser time.
Okay.
Only you, but the rest of others. Thank you.
Okay, Doctor. So I'll try to share my thoughts within 2 minutes. My name is Qazi Saqib, and I'm from Muslim Aid Pakistan. Muslim Aid is a charity organization based in UK. We have been working in Pakistan since 2005, after the 2005 earthquake. So I will shed a light on the perspective of the community engagement and the bridging the gap between the community and the institution. What we have seen that, let me tell you that to the INGO sector, this concept is not new. We have been working on this for the last 3-4 years. You might have heard about the Ready Pakistan Start Network. This is a network of over 50 local and international organizations, and we have been working for the last 3-4 years to work on the anticipatory action to educate it not only to the government but to the other institutions and the communities as well. And we have been we have been the chair of the technical working group for the floods. What we have seen over the period of last 3-4 years, we are working on a very small scale level, because the Start Network funding is very limited, because Start Network provides funds to the local and international organizations below $100,000 for the small initiatives. But let me tell you that with this small amount of money, the local and international organizations have really created result-oriented interventions in the areas, especially in the areas where we experience the heat waves, the floods, and the droughts. What we have seen that the disconnect is between the policy and the implementation wing. Before coming for this session this morning, I went through the National Disaster Risk Reduction Policy, which is a 76 pages document. I'm sure that you might have gone through that. And you will surprised to know that there are only 2 pages on the implementation. The rest of the 74 pages, they talk about the policy and all those things, but it hardly talks about anything about the implementation. And this is one of the key area where we not only in terms of the disaster risk reduction, preparedness, response, whether it's anticipate the action, we really need to work on. If you see the humanitarian development landscape in Pakistan, especially in the general in context of NDMA, you see that we are very good in formulating the policies at the NDMA level. We are very good in translating those policies to the PDMA level. But when you go from PDMA to DDMA level, everything get lost. You hardly see any departmental infrastructure at the district level. We do have the DDMAs in the documents. We do have the focal person, like the additional charges are given to the additional deputy commissioners. But when you go to them, they hardly know about the policies, the procedures, the SOPs, and what's going on at the Islamabad level, at the provincial level, and further downstream to the tehsil, to the community level. You will hardly see the translation of these policies, or what we envision here at Islamabad at the provincial level, to the community. As a Muslim at Pakistan, we have incorporated the concept of anticipatory action in all our programs that we have been implementing. And let me give you the example of the floods. That we have not only constituted the emergency response teams, we have strengthened them in terms of getting the early warning messages, not only from the PMDs, but also from the other actors who are operational in those areas. We have strengthened them by providing them the very localized kind of tools, and we pre-positioned the relief stocks in those areas so that we can minimize the impact of if a disaster happen in that area. And we have very successfully demonstrated in Sindh in last couple of years. So my focus would be like to since you along with the UNDP will be formulating the policy. We must also focus, and we must also engage the lower tier of this ladder, that the communities who get impact from this, the institution at the tehsil and the district level. So once we will involve them, you will have the grassroots level information, you will have the conventional methodology that those people are already applying for over the period of last so many years, that can be incorporated into the policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Saqib, for presenting here your experience of the field and how from the community to policy we can connect, we can bridge this disconnect. I think that's the basic area. That's why we are in partnership looking at it. So we'll be coming to you, and this is part of the consultation also. Your team was also in the Islamabad consultation. So we are going to other provinces also. That is the precise focus, that unless the communities are here and they know what they have to do and what is available for them, then certainly policies will be a book only, not the practice. Thank you for raising this point particularly. So moving to the private sector, because we have heard other speakers talking about the role of private sector. Here we have two experts on that. One is our colleague Fatma Akhtar from the corporate communication and ESG wing, Jazz. And we have Mona. Mona will come to later because you will share your Nepal experience as well. So over to you, Fatma, first. Because ESG has a role important.
Is this, oh, okay, it's audible. Thank you to STPI for organizing a very important conversation. It's very heartening to hear everybody speak about the risk, about disaster resilience. But I think one key thing that is missing from this conversation is the role of technology. The world is changing. Disasters are going to, as someone pointed out, that in Pakistan, floods is going to be a new norm. And I feel that what is a very strong missing link is what role technology can play in not just responding to disasters, but even in early warnings. And this is something that over the past couple of years, we as Jazz, as the country's largest digital company, we have been working with the government, NDMA, and we've been working with an entity which is called GSMA. There's a body of mobile MNOs, mobile network operators, and we have sort of prescribed to a common communication protocol when it comes to disaster response. And this is something we have been doing over the past couple of years, whether it's not just floods. I think heat advisories, we've been doing sort of flood alerts. We've sent about 350 million SMS-based text messages to the people of Pakistan. For us, this is not just ESG or a CSR mandate. This is actually an economic and a business imperative. Whenever we talk about response to any kind of crisis, I feel somebody mentioned multidimensional. I think that's the lens we truly need to adopt, which is also take on board the role of the private sector. You see, businesses exist to serve the needs of the people that they're operating in. So ensuring their well-being and safety is always at the heart of most businesses. So leveraging their networks, we as a telecom operator, we ensure last mile connectivity. So whilst PMD gives the advisory and then it goes to the PDMA and then it's disseminated, there is a faster way of doing this where when the alert comes to us, we can literally within seconds send it across the country. So that's the power of technology. And in this area, now that we've sort of ventured into it, we are understanding it, we really feel the role of technology is really underestimated. So technology is a great equalizer in a disaster response. It can be the difference between is an individual receiving an alert and migrating or moving based on that alert. And that's what we saw when these alerts were sent out. So a request to everybody who's present here is also to look at the role of technologies, to look at the role of digital technologies. Everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. I think it's a big disruptor, but I think even a basic SMS in a disaster can prove to be much more effective than, for artificial intelligence tools to predict or model any kind of disaster resilience. So thank you.
Thank you, Fatma. You are right that technology runs faster than. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Muna Sharistao, she's from basically Nepal, but now based in Geneva for her, entrepreneurship work. She's expertise is on gender and private sector with DRR perspective. Over to you, Dr. Muna.
Thank you. Thank you, Shafqat, and thank you to STPI. Let me thank Fatima actually for raising something that is very close to the work that I do, but also with regards to Nepal. Now, Nepal is seen more from the Gen Z perspective now rather than the Mount Everest. And Gen Z coupled with technology actually did a very good thing recently during the rainy season where the SMSs were very useful. The social media was very active and that was seen as a success. So I think I'll start with that. So let me share some insights into the role of the private sector in implementing anticipatory actions within the DRR. I would like to start with this question. Is the private sector, primarily the micro, small and medium enterprises, prepared to address the damages and losses incurred in the case of disasters? Further than that, what about the MSMEs that is led by women, that is led by marginalized groups or communities, and even the MSMEs that is led by disabled people? I would not like to touch upon the informal sector, not because it is not important, but primarily because of the lack of data. So the private sector, as we know, can act as the fulcrum when it comes to DRRM. So it has moved beyond the bystanders' role, as we have heard since the first day. And this is also reflected in the outcome document of the World Resilient Recovery Conference in June 2025, where stakeholders actually listed 10 priority actions to enhance readiness for resilient recovery. And within the 10 actions, if you look at priority action 5, that devotes to enhance collaboration with the private sector to bolster resilience and recovery efforts. And within the priority action 5, one of the sub 5 action focuses on supporting MSMEs in developing and testing business continuity and recovery plans, ultimately strengthening preparedness and driving resilient recovery. Now, I would also like to share some data on what FEMA says, which says that in the event of a disaster, 40% of businesses actually close down. And after that, another 25% again also closed down within a year. So that is the state after a disaster. So one of the key private sector engagements is to ensure that there is a minimal or no disruption of supply chain and logistics, which you also heard from the ADB colleague earlier, for which anticipatory action roadmaps, and this is the time when Pakistan is developing one, I think must include 5 things. One is the pre-positioning of emergency supplies. 2 is procuring contingency stock or delivering anticipatory cash transfers. And 3 is mapping and onboarding those vendors with tested business continuity plans. Now in Nepal, we have NDRRMA, and that has initiated the development of the first anticipatory action framework and the roadmap 2026-2030 that shifts the focus from reactive to proactive strategies, among others. We also have the anticipatory action framework Nepal monsoon floods 2025, and there's a revision to it, which actually is silent on the role of the private sector. Whereas on the contrary, there are certain mechanisms that is put in place for the relief distribution, which appears prominently when it comes to managing disasters. So on the one hand, we need the private sector to be able to continue supply during and after the disasters, but on the other hand, the role of the private sector from the initial stages in terms of planning often gets missed out. We also have in Nepal the National Startup Policy 2080 in Nepal that fails to address any form of anticipatory action that builds resilience of these MSMEs. And therefore, it doesn't contain any specific dedicated BCPs for startups. In Pakistan, from my understanding, despite policy recognition, there's a big gap in the actual mainstreaming of the private sector into DRRM. And there's also the systematic approach to BCP adoption across the private sector is largely insufficient. Where there is implementation, is very ad hoc and it's not standardized. So in Nepal, there is a lot of appetite from the private sector to be able to adopt these BCP programs, and this is more so from MSMEs that is led by the marginalized groups, as I said, by women, by people with disabilities, and the MSMEs that are there in the rural areas. And actually, they are the ones who need further capacity building. In Nepal, we have started a change initiative. That's my organization, along with NDRC and another private sector organization called Tangent Waves. We have a change initiative that is dedicated to promoting sustainable and resilient business practices that embeds gender equality, social inclusion, and DRRM principles. In that, we've conducted various BCP training programs and orientation on BCP management to journalists, key prominent business figures, as well as the government. Now, all of this is just a small drop in the ocean, I would say, and that there's a huge opportunity and interest for which I understand that there is so many stakeholders here, development partners, who are supporting Pakistan, and I think that can help a lot in the Pakistan context. I would like to end here with something that actually startled me at first, but in hindsight, that's very true. So in Nepal, we had the flood and the rains, and there are examples of some municipalities in Nepal that protested against the relief of these relief materials. And that might sound very astonishing, but instead what they wanted was they demanded for flood control dams. They wanted raised hand pumps. They wanted permanent toilets that is very inclusive. They wanted emergency shelter houses and elevated homes. So what does that sign of refusing those relief means? I think it's a great reminder that the default lens for development must be fair, equitable, and resilient. And in this, the private sector must be very, very active. So let me stress by saying that the anticipatory actions to manage disasters is a very smart way to a resilient, equitable, and sustainable society, and the private sector has a huge role to play, and there has to be efforts to ensure that there's active participation for not just the private sector, but I would say an inclusive private sector in DRRM in general and in anticipatory action in particular. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mona, for sharing Nepal's experience and the enterprise experience. I think this is good that when a municipality in Nepal, they refuse that we don't need all these stuff you are bringing us all the time when disaster hit. Get us prepared against the disaster. So that is the focus. I think this example will be taken to note while we'll be looking at our own experiences and fieldwork. Thank you once again, Dr. Mona, for all the way traveling from Geneva and joining the whole conference, but especially to my session. Thank you. Now I would request Asghar Nawaz Sab, because you have all heard all friends talking about that, and you have been on the decision-making positions where now your colleagues are there. So what is your stake on it, particularly focusing on anticipatory action?
Thank you very much. As always, my compliments to STPI. I had been interacting with them a lot and I would take their input while I was chairman NDMA in 2015 to 17. Very, I think, incisive discussion and input which has come in. What I'll talk would be maybe from the government perspective, although I'm not on that position anymore, but I'd like to give you a view from the other direction also. And I would be like restraining myself to the Pakistan specific discussion. But let me take a cue from the tagline of the theme of which was given by UNDRR on the Global Resilience Day last month in October. And it said so, fund resilience, not disasters. What my colleagues were speaking over here, this is actually, you can't, you need to have correct priorities. And Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. Actually, we've been talking about reactive to proactive. This is where actually the world agreed to the very aspect of that we need to change our approach to be proactive rather than being reactive. And the SFDRR, through its 4 priority areas in the order, laid down also a solution. The first one was understanding disaster risk. We all talked of the data, and unless you don't understand the risk, you can't have a solution to that. The next one was priority 2 was strengthening disaster risk governance. The third one is investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience. And that's what I told you just about what UNDRR said. So fund resilience, not disasters. And the last one is enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response. Ladies and gentlemen, we must understand this is the last aspect for which we always talk and try to, we wait for a disaster to happen. The definition, which is again given by UN and DRR, is that hazards are bound to happen. They are converted into disaster by the human activity. So it is a preparedness that we focus in Pakistan. Since ages, I had 39 years of service in armed forces, in army, and I do remember that from day one, I knew that in every monsoon season, there is a flood protection scheme and there's a plan for flood protection. We would update it every year. We would carry out those actions. We'll be ready for the next year. And there is a complete exercise which is carried out from one season to another. When I came into NDMA, actually, I changed this from a plan to a contingency directive. Because nature is dynamic, it will always appear in a manner that you don't anticipate. And it will always invoke a response that you're not prepared for. Let me tell you, after 2010, my friend is here from WFP, there were strategic warehouses positioned in all over Pakistan, in all the provinces. Some were managed by NDMA, by the PDMA, and they carried all the provisions, the NFIs. And I calculated during my time that if at one time a disaster happened, what is our capacity to do that? And we were ready to, with our stock, we were ready to take on about 500,000 people at one time, with the shelters, with every sort of non-food items I'm talking of. And whatever the lady from Nepal actually mentioned, all these actions were in place, they're still in place. And these are always revisited. After 2010, we made National Flood Protection Plan 4. It's a live document on which there is an agreement of all the provinces. But this fund has got a prescription for all the issues related to flood. We've not been able to do it because there is not enough funding. Whatever we are talking of now here about the new studies, about the new interventions. So when we are able to do that, we should be substantially reducing the risk of floods. We'll not be able to mitigate it. We'll reduce it to a threshold. And after that, whatever is the residual risk left for which we need to carry out our preparedness and the anticipatory actions to manage that. But see it from the business case, we have the people from the private sector here. Whatever we invest in doing that, there were certain, figures given right in the beginning by our friend from UK. Whatever we invest on this, it's around, I think the total budget is 1,600 billion Pak rupees. Whatever we invest in doing this, just imagine the colossal reduction in the damages, losses, and whatever we need to invest in the recovery and resilience and all those aspects. So it actually brings me to the point that the resilience and foresightly directly, we need to actually introduce and embed it in our national development DNA. When we do that, the things will happen. I'll give you an example of this last floods in Punjab. The irrigation network of Punjab remained intact. There were very less damages to the irrigation network because again, it's a lifeline for our agriculture. The communication network that is of, the road network, and one of the motorway also got affected. It got badly bruised. So that means it was not, the DRR had not been taken to account, that this is what it could have been done. Had that been done, whatever we invest now for its repairing all these damages would not have happened. And ladies and gentlemen, I always like to share this example. In 2015, in Karachi, there was a heat wave. In 4 days, 1,200 people were killed. The 1,200 deaths. I was chairman NDMA. We had credible warning. We had passed on that warning. There was, no letting up that this is going to happen. It happened. After that, till to date, 10 years, there had been heat waves, but there had been no casualties of the scale that we experienced at that time. People got aware, people got sensitized, you were able to actually act. We are now, so when I give my 3 or 4 recommendations, I will definitely talk about certain other aspects. NDMA, PDMA, DDMAs, they're just the coordinating authorities. There are so many other stakeholders who are involved in this, all the intervention which are to be taken. The other departments, there are municipalities. There are so many other organizations which happen to do that. There is an answer to your question. If you revisit the NDMA Act, you'll find out that the DDMA is headed by the head of the district council. We don't have local governments. It is the lowest tier, the last mile where we need to actually act. When we talk of all anticipatory act inclusiveness in that planning, is it a demand-driven, approach, or it's a supply-driven approach? Have we ever considered that? But unfortunately, we don't have a strong local government system. And when you don't have, then people are not making the decisions. It is the managers over there who are making the decision, and there's a conflict of interest. So that tier is not there, and that is why this happens every time when it happened and will continue to happen till the time we go on to that. There's talk about New York nowadays. You remember after 9/11, the first person to come on the screen was the mayor of New York to actually apprise the people of what has happened. So need to have a strong local government system. Till that time, if you won't do that, I have seen it happening that the moment a hazard strikes, the response directly comes onto a province or it comes to NDMA. There is no capacity or capability at that local tier to actually respond to that. There was a civil defense organizations. There are so many other organizations, the fire brigade and all those. Rescue 112 has taken a good job of emergency services, but there is no mechanism over there. Now, coming on to what is the way forward, and my one comment, please take it along. You see, Pakistan is vulnerable to multiplicity of natural hazards, climate induced, and it is also vulnerable to the geophysical hazards. And when earthquake, or we have a history of tsunami also, it strikes, the loss which does not come into this direct loss of all these trillions is the human loss, which has got no price. So we need to have this strategy, although it's very difficult to predict. We have a forecast system for this geophysical. But when we make a robust response mechanism for climate-induced disaster, so by default, we're going to have a response for geophysical disaster. And I'll give you an example. If for like in the entire spectrum of risk reduction, you have the infrastructure like the houses, which are resilient for climate, from the climate perspective, rest assured they are also going to be resilient for geophysical hazard. So we need to actually have a holistic view of that. The second thing I already said, so that we need to embed resilience and foresight directly into our national development DNA. We talked of the data. I'm a very strong exponent of multi-hazard vulnerability risk assessment. We have, from the paper given by Shafkat, you must have read that in climate risk index, we are always in the first 10. We are residing at that position since 90s. And we are residing because our exposure is high. And exposure and vulnerability are interrelated. So the exposure is increasing until unless we have a smart way of reducing this exposure. Through that, a lot of investment is required. What we can do is that if we have a risk atlas, then we're going to have a very smart response. As of now, our response mechanism is diluted. We don't want to do anything, but if we would know what are the hot spots, our response mechanism will improve. All our actions emanating from that will improve. We need to significantly, JICA has a lot of contribution toward that, but we need to significantly, improve the capability of our Pakistan Meteorological Department. I've seen them closely. They're very good people. They're very professional, but they're blind. They don't have those sensors. We are qualitative and quantitative forecast. The quality of forecast and, the quantity of what we expect out of an event is still not, especially the short-term forecast, we are not there where we should be. And when we say we are vulnerable, this is the area we need to actually invest. We need to have a very strong local government system. That's that's a statement that we need to have a very strong local government system to actually make the things happen what we are talking about. In the finances, I think we need to have this tagging of risk reduction funds in our development plan of each sector. It must appear that this is the amount you are actually using it. We had recommended at that particular time to the government that at least 5% of our annual development plan budget should be for DRR or adaptation. And the last point is whatever policy or strategy that you make, it must remain aligned to our climate change policy and the other policies that we have. And another point came to my mind just now, policy. You know, we don't have a river act, which a river has a right of way. If we give the river its right of way, maybe in the context of riverine flood and for that matter the flash floods, we can reduce our damages. And it is very easy to again implement that act on ground as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janaska Saab. The way forward is really interesting and workable as well. Particularly the right to river is a subject. If that has been done, then many of our agriculture and farmer would not have grown. So these are the real time solution, and we have noted on particularly on the local government, because there is no response until there is a strong local government, and we agree very strongly to that. Thank you once again. Joanna, can I move to you now? No, let Joanna. Yes. So, yeah.
Thank you very much to STPI for organizing this important event and bringing us all here together to discuss anticipatory action and risk-informed development. I think all has been said during the last couple of hours from several of my colleagues, from saying that we need to have risk-informed and anticipatory development if we are supposed to reach anything and achieve, progress. WFP has stressed the role of policy and SOPs that I know that they're doing very much here in Pakistan, as well as my colleague from the World Bank that mentioned their crisis response toolkit, which we were all consulted in, and ADB with the insurance and especially reinsurance solutions that are key. And from JICA, we heard that resilient infrastructure is important for anticipatory action and building back better. And then we had, the role of the private sector, and here especially digital solutions, as well as business continuation plans that are key in order to, start and kick back, as well as the important aspect of linking policies and action. And thank you very much, General Ashgar Nawaz, for also yourself, showing us that you came into NDMA and changed from preparation to anticipation, as you said before, but also highlighting that we need strong local government and the role of the local government in the response. I'm here on behalf of GIZ, working for the German Development Cooperation as well as the European Union. We have here a program on adaptive social protection. And the role of adaptive social protection is to really bring together all these elements. So linking policy, programs, data, solutions, disaster risk management, as well as climate change adaptation. That is why we're working with, I think, 15 institutions or 15 government entities from the federal level, provincial level, so that they have the response and the means at the time where they need it. But after the risk is gone, the risk is gone, they also need to be prepared for the next risk, because we all know that it's recurring. So how do you want to make sure that, they really take the lesson forward and that we help them with climate change adaptation and better preparedness? I think that is it for my part. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna. Let me say that GIZ and SDPI, we are very close friends. And we are doing various program, and there is one focus program on adaptive social protection. We have set up a social protection center at SDPI, with the GIZ support. So that's why I requested Joanna that you should join us, because earlier Naeem has mentioned that when we are thinking about the anticipatory action, social protection is a major part of it. So it's starting from Naeem to you now, it's a clubbing the thoughts together. So with that, my apologies. I wanted to open up the floor, but when I see the clock, that yeah, if any hard press, because otherwise I will request for the chair's remarks. Quickly, please. Yeah, yeah.
Am I audible? This is Abeda Basi. Thank you so very much for giving me this opportunity. I would really appreciate you to let me complete my points. I'll try to wrap up as quickly as I could. I am in complete with Mr. Saqib and Ms. Fatma, who has just execution of protocols are none, and use of technology. In a report presented by one of the member of SDPI, Ms. Zainab, somewhere at another forum, she noted that the UN has already mentioned forwarded the advisories to Pakistan, respective departments, about the 2025 torrential rains and expected flood. I wonder, everything was the pattern was stated, and the areas were pointed out. Still, Pakistan face one of the severe loss of lives and livelihood. I am questioning the role of NDMA, who receives hefty funds from disaster management and risk reduction and claims to have technology, claims to have early alert system, advisory, everything in place. And despite there was UN advisory, why NDMA did not bother to read and to go through the document, let alone to disseminate it? And I am surprised to know that there is no presence of NDMA's any of the
Okay, let me just close, because I have to conclude it. Other session will start here.
This is a high
Just
for.
Yeah, Jan Sahab will respond to you.
It's all right. Jana Saab is not there anymore, so Jana Saab is not responsible. So
Let me speak then. Let me speak then. Your question is there. First of all, this is an experts roundtable. It is not a panel discussion where question answer things. Only your experts' view, which I requested earlier, anticipatory action. Secondly, NDMA is not here. NDMA was invited. Both of them, the member and the another policy guy, they were invited by the Prime Minister for an urgent meeting. Both were supposed here. Both were confirmed to sit in this, and they are part of this process. The process what we are doing is here. They are part of it, and actually they are in the lead, and they have to use this product which we will come up with. So we wanted you have lasted your time in other things instead of giving your thoughts on that. So yeah, give your recommendation. Okay, thank you very much. Your point well taken. So now, Thomas Connon, Deputy Country Director, Chair of the session. You have heard our colleagues from online and here. And, World Food Program is also, SDPI is very close partner. And we have started this very important task together on anticipatory action strategy and consultation process. And afterward, what more would come up, that would be there. So as a strong partner with SDPI, you are here as chair. So over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shafkat. General colleagues, I've been very lucky. I'm lucky to be back in Pakistan. Indeed, it's my second posting. I arrived just a couple of months ago. I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to listen to all of the experts. I'm lucky that we have had such a fruitful discussion on anticipatory action. Your Pakistan finance minister was declaring yesterday that climate change was, I think, an existential issue for Pakistan, and anticipatory action is definitely a solution, a tool to minimize how existential or critical is this issue. we face two realities, right? At the same time, we always have the two sides of the coin. On one side, anticipatory action is definitely not new to Pakistan. I'll come back to that. But whether to Pakistan or to the region, I understand there is like 137 framework on anticipatory action in the sub-region. So a lot of countries, we had the chance to hear from Nepal, we have had a lot to learn, to teach, to all the other countries on everything that they have been doing in other countries. So it's definitely huge progress since 2020, 2010, since the previous floods, since 2015, we heard from NDMA. On the other side, anticipatory action is still referred as pilots or small actions. Or it was great to hear from the Start Network colleagues, but referring also that the difficulty to do at that scale is not straightforward. Actually, the humanitarian community, the United Nations, is not necessarily better than anywhere else. And WFP is part of this humanitarian community, so-called. We released 2 weeks ago a flood response plan on the flood that started maybe the late July or 1st of August. So much for anticipatory action when it takes 3 months to publish just a response plan. But so if AA is not new, why the strategy that we're doing with SDPI and NDMA then indeed? If AA is not new for Pakistan, because early warning is not new for Pakistan, it goes way beyond the shepherd from Gilgit, Pakistan, that have been doing better than a lot of technology. And I agree with the colleagues from Jazz that is no longer here on the power of technology, but eventually we know that it has been fallible, right? That the local knowledge is key to anchored into the strategy that we are trying to build. NDMA has been progressing so much. I can relay in comparing flood response between 2010, 2011, where I was here, with the latest one, the capacity not only of 1122, as you were mentioning, but the level of institutional response is without comparison. And I can understand frustration on why can we not do more, but the progress is extremely impressive in these 10 years. So why now still? 10 or 15 years ago, we still were launching evaluation of is anticipatory action relevant, useful. It's absurd, but it was not straightforward. The idea that you were going to provide cash to a whole community, to absolutely everyone in the community before the shock happens, was not straightforward. A lot of donors, a lot of actors were going to say, well, that's not money well used. When there is not enough funding, why don't you ensure that if the shock happens, then you target the most vulnerable and then you provide a response? So it was not straightforward, the idea that we should provide anticipatory action. And a number of us may still struggle with this idea that it is cost efficient. Now, there has been so many evaluations, some with the World Bank, some random control at the highest level, that demonstrated that not only it is better in terms of impact on food security, because I come from World Food Programme, but not only in terms of coping mechanism for the communities, it is demonstrated that receiving the means before the shock is better. It goes without saying, but it's better if it's demonstrated. But it's also cost efficient. It's cost efficient to provide before, even to everyone, even if we know that while we will provide that 10 times, 2 out of the 8 times, maybe there will be no shock, because we were almost certain that there will be a shock, but eventually, thankfully, there was no shock, and still it's cost efficient. So evaluation progress, technology progress. I think we have to be very proud. I don't know the colleagues, I don't want to name them, but I don't know if you heard there was a technology for all competition the last few months. Actually, that was not organized by us. That was organized by another, by Global Resilience Partnership, another fora. We also, WFP, were launching some kind of seed funding for startups on climate change. Now, Pakistani and university and colleagues in university should be extremely proud. It is actually the National University of Science and Technology that was part of the finalist of this Tech for All for Resilience challenge, and they managed by designing an AI model that I would not dare to try to present because I will get it totally wrong, to demonstrate how they could better inform multi-hazard vulnerability assessment for anticipatory action, thanks to an AI model. Anyway, so technology progress, early warning progress, even though still there is quite a lot of progress. Pakistan is not part of early warning for all that we had just before. So there is an opportunity for Pakistan to benefit from additional support at that level. Pre-arranged financing, I was very impressed to hear all the plans from the colleagues from ADB. But pre-arranged financing is, and thanks for all the work that GIZ is doing on this, but it is not a given. The opportunities provided to the government of Pakistan, to the communities of Pakistan on pre-arranged financing are still very limited. It was great to hear from the private sector, but actually even the level of insurance that are offered for the private sector here in Pakistan is still too limited. So for all of these reasons, that's why we are partnering with SDPI and NDMA to develop the strategy that will be landing. I'll just finish on one point of where we hope to land. Where we hope to land is to help define an optimal combination of sequencing. So it's not only, it's ensuring that anticipatory action leads to early action, leads to a traditional response. So sequencing, layering, so having tools and disaster risk financing instruments that are layered on top of each other. That includes the market base, working with the private sector, include the traditional funding instruments, and across so the whole continuum of anticipatory, early, and traditional response, entirely linked to the social protection schemes that are being developed, that are existing at federal level and that are being developed at provincial level, and therefore built on the wealth of data and usefulness that the national registries offer. And therefore, this through a totally inclusive co-design that SDPI is leading on our behalf, aiming to associate and link the institutional system to the communities. So that's where we hope to land, and I'm very glad that this exercise could benefit from all the expert view that we had around the table today.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for giving more clarity, which started by myself, name, and finally, after everything, you cleared it. So where will we land and what is the strategy and why we are doing now, despite all these things. So thank you very much, all the panelists. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Marcus. I think they are online or maybe not. Marcus Oxley. Thank you, Naeem Gulzab. Dr. Mona Sherista. Bilal, he has left already. Thank you very much. Abrar Saab, thank you very much for your contribution. Qazi Saqib Saab, thank you very much. Arnab Kumar Saab, thank you very much for your really valuable comments. And Fatma, she left. Thank you all. And Janal Saab, thank you very much for giving this time. And thank you, all of you, those who have been attending it. And I think this is important. I know that there would have been many other people, those who want to speak. But already, this was a panel of experts they talked about. And even if you have any idea on this, kindly send us through email or WhatsApp. So that will be incorporated. It doesn't mean that this session is the end of our consultation. This consultation goes on until the refined form of the strategies come up. Thank you very much once again, everyone.